Hi and welcome to my greenhouse on what is a rather wet and rather blustery end of October day. I thought I'd just do a quick video on just what I do to prepare my greenhouse, and primarily the Sarracenias, but also some of the sundews and things for winter that is now rapidly approaching. So as you can see, most of the Sarracenias now are starting to show signs of dying back. Some have already been doing this for quite some time now. We've got a few that have put out fresh new growth. So things like Chithatis soper, my sort of homegrown Mori here, they do tend to put out quite a lot of fairly young growth, sort of autumn time, but their older sort of spring and summer pitchers will start dying back now. So my primary thing about winter, or preparing the plants for winter, is hygiene and just keeping them free from pests and diseases. Now, in my experience, the main disease that the Sarracenias can get is grey mould botrytis. I can show you an example of some of that on a few of the leaves here. So if I just zoom in on this one, you can see that sort of feathery grey mould there. So that is going to start thriving in the sort of damp and the cold conditions that certainly autumn in the United Kingdom brings us. And so you want to be careful of that sort of thing. So what I tend to do is, in terms of trimming pitchers back, contrary to what a lot of people do, is I actually like to sort of bring them back gradually. So for example, this one here, yes, it's died back at the top, but as you go a bit further down, it is still quite green and still quite healthy and alive at the bottom here. So I would actually consider cutting this one back, probably about here somewhere. So, pair of scissors or secateurs that have been sterilised, take it off, and then dispose of it. I do that because I feel that there is still plenty of nutrients that the plant will recover from here. Yes, it will gradually die back all the way, and so you'll end up with that starting to brown and go back, and leaves like this that start to brown and go back. But there is still nutrients in this leaf that the actual plant can pull back. I mean, it's basically like deciduous trees. The leaves turn from green to yellow as the actual plant removes the chlorophyll and the other nutrients from the leaf, and then basically prepares for winter. So that's what I like to do. Now, sometimes it does depend a bit. You might find that some plants or some traps, like this one, for example, Chithatis soper, is actually showing a sort of a bit of decay here. Now, that actually might look to you on the camera like sort of feathery brown mould, but actually it's not. So sometimes what appears to be bad isn't as bad as you think. I would actually still leave this on because this trap is still mostly live. If, however, you were actually starting to develop full-blown botrytis, even down here, but with a top that was still green, then actually at that point I would cut it off. And an example of that I can show you is actually this leaf in here, one of my other Chithatis sopers. Now that actually is decay on what is actually a new leaf, although it has been attacked by greenfly, so it's a bit distorted. But actually something has obviously touched it part way down, maybe another leaf that had botrytis, and it has now infected that leaf there. So that is a definite one for removal all the way back past the botrytis, and then again dispose of that, compost it or burn it if you want to, but certainly keep it away from the plants and root from the greenhouse. Other plants I've got that I like to keep clean and tidy, my Orophelias. Now, they have for a while now sort of already died back a lot. Their traps come back quite early. I do find with Orophelia that she does actually tend to develop botrytis quite easily. That particular leaf, I can detect some feathery botrytis on it. It may not be quite so obvious on the camera. So again, I would actually cut that off. but not all, again, not all the way back to the bottom, just down far enough that it is sort of back to the sort of still green stuff. And I would actually leave these on here until they go yellow, and then they can be pulled off. Now I do find, again, with Orophelias particularly, that even some of the non-carnivorous leaves can just suddenly get botrytis down in here. And then I would actually consider actually pulling them out. Now for Orophelia, this is actually quite easy. Her leaves pull out really, really easily. I mean, I didn't pull on that particularly hard at all, and that came out really easily. So for the ones that have died back all the way, I do tend to just gently give them a bit of a tug without too much effort. If they come out, then I take them off that way. And again, that's not a problem because these have already died back all the way down to effectively the rhizome anyway. For other Sarracenias, I would caution about pulling them all the way back or ripping them back off to the rhizome. I mean, I do that sometimes, but I tend to do it a little bit less as it comes into winter, just because there is a bit of a danger if you rip still active. Sorry about the noise there, that's the rain coming down again. If you're still ripping them off, you might leave actual scars on the rhizome itself that could then be open to botrytis getting in and infecting the rhizome, and you really don't want to have that happening. Just while we're talking about botrytis, if it does get into the rhizome, what you really need to then is actually cut the rhizome back until you find nice flesh, nice living flesh, not sort of rotting brown flesh. What I have done in the past to sort of then seal or prevent reinfection in the ends I've cut is used some fairly traditional sort of mould and botrytis type preventions. You can use things like flowers of sulphur, which is just basically powdered sulphur, which is a antifungal. It's quite often used for if you're sowing potatoes, you cut them in half in the ground, you put sulphur on the edges so they don't get the botrytis. You can also get something called Bordeaux mixture, which is a copper sulfate, I think it is, or possibly because sulfite mixture. Again, compounds containing copper are again naturally antifungal and things like that. I've not actually tried Bordeaux mixture on Sarracenias before, so I don't know whether they'd react badly to it. I've certainly used sulphur on them before now, and I've used Bordeaux mixture quite often on, for example, cucumber plants where the stems this late in the year start to get botrytis and rot on them. I sort of mixed it up with a bit of water and sort of painted it on, and it's sort of controlled the spread of it, and it sort of certainly stops it spreading. It won't get rid of it completely, but it certainly stops it spreading, but could definitely be used to sort of treat an open-ended cut on a rhizome. Other treatments I've already heard of that are quite good for funguses and bacteria are organic things like hydrogen peroxide. Again, I've not actually tried that one myself. It is something I'm actually going to look at for control of other pests in my greenhouse in an organic way. Hydrogen peroxide is just basically water with one extra oxygen. You do have to be a little bit careful with terms of the concentration on this, and they recommend usually 3% solution, but then again water that down and that can be sprayed onto things. Again, I don't know how carnivorous plants will react to that, so that's going to be a bit of an experiment potentially on some other plants I've got, like some of the chilies. But it's another possibility. But like I say, the best cure for botrytis is to avoid it in the first place and look for these sort of problems and actually get on top of them before they spread and become a major issue for your rhizome. Here's another example of some botrytis quite deep down in actually another Orophelia. So actually this botrytis now got onto this leaf. See the featheriness there. Actually, by the look of it, came from an old flower stalk. Where it originally came from, I don't know. But we can also additionally see, if you look for those little round white sort of spheres in there, they are slug eggs. So that's another thing you might probably want to be looking out for, are slugs basically laying eggs in the crown. In themselves they don't seem to do a great deal of damage. On occasions they do eat a little bit of the plants, the young shoots, but that sort of a pest is likely to actually bring in with it diseases like botrytis. So cut out that leaf as well, and then clear out any undesirable pests or their eggs if you find them. Other things to look out for, I find this time of year again, is you can still get the pitchers being attacked by, for example, greenfly. So that one's been attacked by greenfly. My Jithatic sopa seems to be particularly prone to the greenfly coming in and getting her. That little trap down there has, you can see the little dark marks on it. That's why I've already rubbed the little buggers off. But they've already done their damage, and that trap will be deformed and distorted and will not really make a proper trap. Okay, it's one of our autumn ones, and I'm surprised she's still putting them out, but it's still a bit disappointing that they've actually done that. So, like I say, a lot of these I will now start to trim back. So this one here, again, I would take that back to about there. But some of them, if they're not showing mass amount of botrytis yet, or they've only just got tops, I tend to leave them on a bit. Otherwise, you do tend to spend every weekend coming and trimming down another inch and trimming down another inch. So I let them at least start to brown off a fair way before I decide that, right, I'm going to take that one off. Or you start getting rot part way down. Again, that particular greying there is not actual botrytis, it's more of just the actual body of the actual trap has just rotted a bit there. I think, again, from sort of feel, yeah, probably too many flies because it's absolutely stuffed full there. So I'm not too bothered about that, but I'll let that stay on. And again, that big tall one there, I will probably wait for that to start to die down to at least down to that sort of midpoint there before I actually consider cutting that off, just because it saves me an awful lot of trimming around in the greenhouse. Like I say, cutting down an inch here, another inch there, and that sort of thing. Again, some of the other ones over here, some little pitchers, again, I will just snip off the now dead and removing traps. For things like purpurea, again, just treat it the way you do the bigger, taller pitchers, and just carefully snip them off. Her traps tend to stay for a lot longer, at least a couple of years, but they will after a while start to decay like that. I mean, sometimes I do sort of trim those in half. They don't look quite so good on her, but then they do quite rapidly sort of go to the point where you can get underneath the traps and just sort of snip them off with a pair of scissors, or if you're very careful, you can just gently pull them off. I've done a bit of tidying up on some of the sundews, so I went round them the other week and just snipped away some of the dying brown leaves, just to, again, open up the sort of centres a bit, just to avoid some of the botrytis and the rot that can get in there. But they're still actually doing all right at the moment. A quick look under the table where my Madagascariensis are. They're actually starting to die back a bit now from the bottom. These do tend to actually get botrytis and rot, and when that actually starts to happen on the leaves, you can just snip them off pretty much down to ground level, and they will come back. They do come back really well. They're still actually flowering, although sometimes you'll find that, I'm just going to focus on this. Come on, zoom focus on my hand. Nope, I'm not going to do it. That actually some of the flower stalks will actually start to rot as well. For things like Banata, she has all of these I've been tidying up today. They had a lot of sort of old dead growth in them. it does seem to just dry out though, the growth on these, the old growth, and so it doesn't sort of stay wet with the possibility of rot getting into it. But even so, I like to just gently pull them off or just snip them off, just because it tidies up the plant, and again just gives you that bit more airflow that tries to avoid or eliminate quite so much rot setting in, or the potential of rot setting in. So that's basically what I've been doing in my greenhouse. Just general maintenance and just general tidying up and just looking after the plants and looking out for greenfly or other pests, and just looking out for rot, and just, like I say, just general hygiene, and making sure they're happy and will not cause you too much of a problem during the winter, or bugs and diseases will not cause you a problem during the winter. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I've got a few more things to do in my greenhouse. I've got a few more of my chilies to deal with here. If you're interested, I've had a fantastic bumper crop of orange habaneros that I'm not entirely sure what to do with because they are unbelievably hot, but I'm sure I'll find something to do with them, and a whole lot of others. Oh, and the last few things I've been doing is just picking off the last few actual flower heads or seed heads that might still have some seeds in them. You need to be a little bit careful again at this time of year that if you leave them too long, they can actually start to develop botrytis on them. And if you do get botrytis on the seed heads, I would thoroughly recommend just throwing the seed head away. Even if it was from a cross that you really wanted to keep, more than likely the botrytis is going to have got into that seed head, possibly infected the seeds, and they probably will not store and they will not last. So thanks again for watching. I hope you found that helpful and informative. Do leave some comments below if you wanted to, and give it a thumbs up and a like. And thank you very much for watching. I'll do another video soon.